recently is taking, and somebody's going to have to let me know if this is a good idea, taking 60,000 and then dividing it by the BPM, so in this case 142, and then dividing that by 4, and then setting my attack to about that. So in this case 105.6, so 105 or 106. So I'm going to turn on this compressor and set the attack timer to 105. Let's go with 106. And I'm going to leave the settings the way that they are currently, and then if I'm not loud enough later, I'll come back and push the volume a little bit more. So the first thing in the chain before all that is an EQ, where I'm kind of cutting the low lows. Then I have Maximus. So in Maximus, what I'm going to be doing is using multiband compression to just kind of shave off little bits of volume here and there and pushing the volume up just a little bit here and a little bit there, just to kind of make things a little bit louder. So I'm going to start with the low end, and you'll notice that currently I have my band set up for extremes. So I'm dealing with like 50 hertz and below on the low end, and then when I go to the high end, I'm doing about 10K and above. On the 50 hertz and below, I've got a note at negative 8.7 decibels, and that's where I like my low end to get to. So if I'm not getting there, I will push the volume a little bit to get no fence around. Take another sip, breathe another whistle, and I just push until I'm getting a little bit of compression happening on the top end, but not too much, and then I stop. Okay, so in most cases, I will level match, but in this case, when I'm getting the low end where I want it to be, I'm not going to. So I'm not. Something else you'll notice on my low end for 50 hertz and below, I'm merging the signal by 50%. So I'm already kind of doing that as I'm mixing, as y'all saw. All of my low end, so my kick and my 808s are all merged 100%. So they're all mono anyway. So this is really just taking anything that's left over and kind of making sure that it's a little bit more in mono. That's 50 hertz and below anyway. My mids are everything that was in the middle, if you'll remember. So all of this. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of compression here. Down by 0.8. So this is what I was talking about. This is me level matching. So because I pushed this up by 0.8, I'm pulling it back by 0.8. That is so that I do not change the balance, the frequency balance of this song. I said before, I'm also going to add a little bit of saturation. So I'm going to flip back and forth between the two types and then just kind of pick the one I like the texture of better. And I'm only adding this saturation. Well, for starters, I'm only adding 1%, so it's a very small, tiny amount. And I'm only adding it to the very loudest stuff. So it's almost like acting like a soft clipper in a way. A level match. So I'm going to pull this down by 0.6. But then what I'm going to do is... I'm just going to expand everything in this range just a little bit. Let's go up 5%. 5.3 is good. No fence around. Okay, let's go back and turn down the main hats just a little bit. Take another hit. Let's go to the master. On the master, I'm not going to level match because I'm not changing the balance. The master is I'm going to put a node about as high as it will go. And then I'm going to expand everything that is on the quieter end by a little bit. So I'm going to push this up to, I'm going to start with 4%, and then later on I will push it up as high as 4.5%. I don't tend to go any more than that because if I'm doing more than that here, I should probably go back to the mix and change things. And also I've noticed that it changes the way that textures sound and the way that, I don't know, it gives things a weird like whooshing, pumpy kind of effect if you do it too much. So I tend to kind of back it off if I notice that a little bit more. Okay, that is our first instance of Maximus. After Maximus, we have our compressor, which has been working this entire time. As I said before, I set the attack time to what I set it to before. Again, let me know if that's a good idea or a bad idea. I'm not entirely sure. This compressor is mostly just to push a little bit of extra volume to the entire thing. So anyway, after this compressor, we go into a limiter, which isn't actually being used as a limiter. I'm using it as kind of as a visual gauge for how much I'm going to push, and then I use it to push volume into what is after it, which, as you can see here, is a soft clipper. Then it goes into the soft clipper. It gets soft clipped off, and then we're going to see it in one of our later things. The next thing in the chain is patcher, where I'm taking the lows and merging them a little bit more, taking the highs, separating them a little bit, and then doing kind of the opposite with the stuff in between. We have another instance of Maximus. On this one, I'm going to solo the mids, and I'm also going to introduce a little bit of look-ahead delay on this one. Something I didn't mention before, in Maximus before I was compressing, now I am limiting, so you'll notice this is flat. Before it was up by the 9, so I was doing kind of a lighter amount of compression. Now we're doing limiting, essentially. I believe. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Back by 1.2. Let's go to mids. Okay, I want the middle range of my main snare clap to be louder, so I'm going to boost it. So I'm going to boost somewhere between 1 and 5,000 hertz. Generally around 2,000 is where I'm hitting. Okay, while we're here, I'm also going to cut some of the low lows. I think it's fine where it is, actually. It's just kind of catching the very, very loudest stuff. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of saturation again. So let's pick which one we like the texture of better.
Tell me that you're blind when I fail to hide.
This coffee isn't made for two, it was only made for you.
Let's do the same thing and expand some of the quieter stuff. Let's start with about 4%.
No offense.
Take another hit.
Okay, now that I've done this and kind of compressed the entire song a little bit, I think the vocals are a little bit loud, so I'm going to lower them a little bit. And then because I'm lowering the vocals a little bit, I'm going to go back to the main melodies, and make sure that the sidechaining is still occurring the way that I want it to. Because, let me pause that. If you make the vocals too quiet, you'll see that this blue line is where the vocals are going to. That blue line will get too low, and then my threshold won't be low enough to catch, you know, to pull the volume of whatever you're trying to sidechain, in this case the melody, down.
No fence around the dog.
After Maximus, I'm going to do two things. I've got a limiter, which I'm going to use kind of as a final stop to just to kind of get a gauge on, or to make sure that I'm not going above 0 decibels as far as the true peak max is concerned. Okay, now that I'm hearing this again, I do want to turn this vocal down a little bit more. It's the main hook.
Water to your lips, take another sip, breathe another wisp.
There is a like kind of breath in here,
Take another,
but it kind of sounds cool.
water to your lips, take another sip, breathe another wisp.
The limiter, which isn't doing anything. I've got a loudness meter, which is just kind of telling me how loud things are in general. So I'm going to run this a little bit before the drop of the song.
You made your
Gauge for how loud things are. And currently things are very, very loud. Compressor. Bring the threshold down a little bit. Instead of 10 decibels, let's go to 8. Oh, it's not catching quite as much stuff.
Don't say that.
Bring down the gain a little bit as well. Okay, let's go and go back to Maximus. Let's take this from 4% and let's bring it down to 2.8 is fine. Let's do the same thing on this one. Let's bring it down to up close, as close to 0 as possible, but I don't want to get it to 0 or above 0. I think if it gets to 0, I think it's technically okay, but I just to be safe, I'd get below it. So, by the way, as this is running and doing its thing, I'm essentially looking to make sure I'm not going above 0, and then I'm shooting for about -9 decibels on the integrated LUF. Currently I'm at -8.6, which is pretty close. So I think it's close enough to where I want it. So I'm going to turn this off now because it's not doing anything. If you have any questions about any part of this mixing and mastering process, feel free to let me know down in the comments. Also, on the flip side, if you see anything I can improve, I'm not an expert by any means, feel free to let me know in the comments as well. But yeah, let's just let part of the song ride. By the way, this is a song by me and Red26. I don't think I mentioned that. So I'm the one doing the hook, and then I'm also the one doing this like intro part here.
You made your
And
coffin, so
Red is doing pretty much everything else.
to be me, myself, and I. Now it's all.
But yeah,
You made your coffin, so go fucking lay in it. I don't think you had a stone, so you ain't gonna do shit. You played the fool, so make a face and sit. No fence around the doghouse, go fucking lay in it.
Bottle to your lips, take another sip.